when I came out here to UCLA in the 60s, I was not familiar at all with roller derby. And I was in a fraternity house at UCLA and some of the guys would go down to the Olympic Auditorium on, I think it was like on a Friday night, whenever they had the games. It was called Roller Games at the time. And, one night I went with them, and I was in film school at UCLA. I hadn't quite entered film school. I was an undergrad at the time. But I went down there one night, and I just thought this was a great backdrop for a movie. And, I'd always been thinking about ideas for movies, and, as a writer, you always, look into every aspect of life to get your ideas, whether it's a newspaper article or whether it's something you see on the street, whatever. And I went down to this like dank, dark, seedy hole down in downtown LA, which is really kind of the pits. They only used it, years ago it was used more for sporting events, but it had deteriorated to a point where they were only using it as for wrestling or roller derby. It was almost had this, this sordid quality about it that was, I thought, had great atmosphere, and it was a great backdrop for a movie. And, it was kind of attracted a lower middle class element of, people who would kind of savor the whole carny atmosphere of it all. And I thought there was great character to it that could form a great backdrop for a movie. In addition, I thought that the skaters, the roller derby players, roller games players at the time, were characters unto themselves, and that they, and I thought to myself, well, what would provoke somebody to go into this? Because it's not a legitimate sport. It's like, wrestling was. It's, it was kind of a, it wasn't theater and it wasn't sports, but it was in that middle ground, which was kind of exhibitionism under the guise of sports, but everybody kind of knew it wasn't an actual legitimate sport. It was more like a circus sideshow. I don't remember exactly what I was writing at that particular moment, but I thought, the next script I write, this could be great fodder. And also, because there were women on the team, I thought those were interesting too, because, women fighting and that whole, female macho aspect of it. It just was fresh. It was original to me. It's something that never had been done in a movie before. So I thought, boy, to come up with the idea for a character that was in this kind of a situation, and what would compel her to go into it, and how would she survive in it. And I just thought it was very colorful and very rich, and had a lot of dramatic possibilities to it. I remember I wrote the script itself. I did a lot of research on the script. First of all, I took it to, there was a company at the time that I was going to develop it with, and they set up all the research facilities. In other words, they put me in touch with a lot of the skaters and a lot of the team managers and owners and that. So I spent many weeks, I think I must have spent 10, 12 weeks just doing actual research, where I would hang out with the skaters and go to the games, and I met them all. I'd have lunch with them, or a drink or coffee, whatever. And I just tried to get a sense of who they were, and what were they thinking, where were they coming from, and what was their socioeconomic status, and what were their hopes and dreams, and try to get a sense of who they were apart from the roller games, just so I get an idea of the nature of their personas, their characters, their personalities. So that probably took a couple of months to and then the actual writing probably took 6 or 8 weeks for a first draft. But my original concept for it was not a RAQUEL Welch type. It was a much more unattractive, heavier girl, because that was the prototypical roller derby. You didn't see too many RAQUEL Welch types in roller derby. There was a couple of attractive women, but most of them were not. And that was my original idea, was to go with more like, there was an actress at the time named Holly Near. Do you remember her at all? She was not a big star, obviously, but she was a terrific character actress, and I sort of envisioned that. And then, I talked to, the producer that I was going to do it with was talking, was trying to get it more into the, well, we need a star kind of thing. And I was thinking who the stars were at the time, and then it just hit me that, I mean, Raquel Welch was a huge star at the time. You know, this was like early '70s, and I'm thinking, who were the big stars at the time? Jane Fonda. Well, she wasn't going to do it. She just did They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Streisand. She wasn't going to do it. But Raquel was a huge star. She really was.
So Raquel was your initial.
Yes, because she was, and I liked her. You know, in most of the stuff I saw with, I thought she was underrated, and I thought she had the potential to do, you know, something really good, something very dramatic. And I thought, boy, you know, if I could hit the right note, kind of mold the character to fit her, and that could show her in a whole new light, in a more dramatic light, that she would respond to it, and it would be a way of getting the movie made. And if she succeeded in the part, as I knew she would, then I thought, you know, it could be something. And I had an agent at the time, and gave him the script, and got his notes, and did some revisions, and I said, what, you know, we talked about how are we going to get it off the ground. I said, it's a star vehicle. I think we've got to get it to one of the female stars. And it was ICM, which was the company. It was ICM before they became ICM, and they were called CMA at the time. They had a whole stable they were the #1 agency. And they had a stable of stars, and Raquel was a client there. And I said, let's get it to Raquel. He says, great. So, you know, I'm always somebody who doesn't believe in just letting other people go ahead and do it. I've always felt, you know, if something's got to be done, I've got to do it myself. I'm, you know, very kind of aggressive in that way and persevering in that way. So I envisioned that script sitting on a stack of 30 other scripts, and, you know, her never getting to it. And I just knew instinctively that she'd respond to this material. And I thought, I've got to get it to her some way other than just through normal channels in which, you know, she might never read it, or it might just sit there, whatever. So I said, you know, I was very impulsive and impetuous and very kind of a little bit ballsy. Okay, sure, yeah. So my initial instinct was to get it to her company. Her husband owned they ran a production company called Kurtwell, right. Patrick Curtis at the time. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, maybe I'll take it up to him and introduce myself and say, you know, I wrote the script for your wife, and I think she'd be great in it. So I found out the address. I called information, got the address of Kurtwell Productions, and strangely enough, it was a street in Beverly Hills. It was not it was a residential street. It wasn't a commercial street in Beverly Hills. And I got a map, and I found out, I located the address, and I started driving up, and it was in, you know, one of the canyons. It was off Coldwater, and I found myself driving up the and located the address, and sure enough, it was in front of this big, beautiful house in Coldwater Canyon. And I realized it was not an office, it was their house. And I thought to myself, boy, do I have the nerve to go up to their house and ring the doorbell? Thinking, why not? What do I have to lose? Now, let me, you know, granted, this was the days before stalkers, and, you know, this was 1970, 71, whatever. And, you know, so I didn't have that, you know, to stop me. I mean, I just felt, well, why not? You know, what do I have to lose? What are they going to do? Say no, get out of here, slam the door in my face? You know,